Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for this Thursday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. Up first here, we've got the NOAA weather radio transmitter at Whittier is out of service and will remain out of service until further notice. And we apologize for any inconvenience this causes. Up next, hazardous weather graphic, dense smoke advisories out for Upper Yukon Valley, Chukliutsik, Beaver, Fort Yukon, those areas into the Arctic Village area and along and south of the Brooks Range over into possibly the northern Koyukuk Valley as well. That's out for tonight and actually through tomorrow afternoon for areas of dense smoke at times. Of course, reducing visibilities down to half a mile or so. And from Southeast Alaska, they're introducing a new podcast called Weather Seekers. Southeast Alaska Seekers. Evidently, it's supposedly going to be known as the podcast of weather truth. So you might want to look into that and see just how truthful it is. And from there, going on to fire danger, a lot of precipitation occurred across much of the state in the last 24 hours with just, for example, 12-hour rainfall amounts ending at 3 p.m. this afternoon range from nearly an inch at Tok to half an inch at Northway. Eastern Copper River Basin, Chitina picked up a little over an inch of rain and about a quarter of an inch in the Gulkana-Glen Allen area. Lighter amounts, there was some up here, but it was a lot lighter and kind of more hit and miss. So it still knocked back the fire danger here over the Upper Yukon Valley, especially south of the Yukon River there, but still pretty high to nearly extreme in some areas up there. And a little bit here, not much rain fell, say from Delta Junction over to the Fairbanks area. So still areas of high fire danger in that area. And also up here along the northwest coast, Kotzebue and towards Selawik over to Buckland, high to very high fire danger in that small area there. They kind of missed out on significant precipitation, as did the area here, southeast of Unalakleet and the Nulato Hills in there, and King Salmon area on down along the coastline a ways, and northeast Bristol Bay. Still high fire danger due to lack of precipitation, but everywhere else looking really good fire danger-wise. On satellite, you can see quite vividly this pretty active frontal system for this point in July here, coming onto the coast and the low center just back to the west there, and rainfall occurring from Unalaska, eastern Aleutians there, to the Alaska Peninsula northward, all the way to the, starting to spread into the western Arctic coast. And Kivalina picked up half an inch of rain today in the last 12 hours or so, as did Nome and Kipnuk as well. So quite an area there of half-inch rainfall. Some areas had less, some areas had a little bit more, but generally pretty uniform here along that front. Some good soaking rains with it coming eastward, and also some rather gusty winds associated with it as well, where 43-mile-an-hour wind gusts at Cold Bay, and generally the eastern Aleutians and Alaska Peninsula had less or lower wind speeds than that, but 43 miles an hour at Cold Bay, 46 miles an hour at both Tuksuk Bay and Cape Newenham today with that, and anywhere from actually 30 to 45 mile an hour wind gusts all the way up to the northwest coast there along Kivalina. They had 35 miles an hour to go with that half inch of rain today. And then as that pushes through, winds diminish, just some scattered showers, much lighter winds here back into the Pribilofs. And the Aleutians, not too bad, sunshine, Adak today, and as well as Atka. And Shimia, though, socked in with a quarter-mile visibility and dense fog. And over the eastern interior, we've got this area of pretty significant rainfall occurring, as I mentioned, with some pretty heavy amounts in the last 12 hours over a fair area here in the southeast interior, right on down to the North Gulf Coast. Cordova about 1/3 of an inch or 1/4 to 1/3 of an inch of rain in the last 12 hours. And then the thunderstorm area mostly up through here, and actually lightning strikes extending across the Brooks Range. And just east of Barrow there, had lightning strikes clawed the ground or clawed the water into the Arctic Ocean this afternoon. Weaker system here with a lot of clouds over the southeast coast, and that really not moving too fast there, so it's bringing up to 1/2 inch. Well, rainfall amounts are kind of varied and variable there, with 1/2 inch falling at Ketchikan, or 2/3 of an inch, and by contrast, Juneau just having 1/100th of an inch of rain, as did Yakutat picking up 1 or 200ths, but the rain there, they're kind of in between the two systems there, the heavier rain over the eastern and southeast interior. On the chart, here's that trough associated with that moisture, kind of an upper level spin here over the Yukon, and that creating that area of moisture, kind of edging it back to the west a little bit, and then that's kind of sliding off thunderstorms from roughly Eagle, where they picked up a fair amount of rain today, 2/3 of an inch during the day today at Eagle. And again, as I mentioned, thunderstorms all the way out and to and off the Arctic coast there. Not too bad here over the interior, just variable clouds, really isolated sprinkles, showers, but nothing significant here. Sunshine, Kodiak, on up into the Cook Inlet area and Kenai Peninsula, into northern Cook Inlet, seeing some clearing this afternoon. Then this front out to the west, pushing in with that northwest turning westerly flow there coming out of the Russian Far East, associated with a pretty good jet and a rather active upper level trough supporting this feature, pushing eastward, and then otherwise not too bad high pressure along the Aleutians for areas of dense fog to sunshine. And tonight that front pushes eastward and weakens, so the rainfall amounts will become lighter, still quite an area of light rain with this pushing in toward the central interior back to the northwest coast, but winds will be coming down considerably from what you've had today, especially over along the coast here northward, and they'll get a little gusty over the interior, western interior tonight, but nothing serious. Another trough will bring a chance or enhancement of showers or light rain to the Pribilofs later on tonight, and just some scattered showers over the eastern Aleutians. This feature here weakening, thunderstorms lingering past midnight, mostly in this portion of that trough, and rain and the moderate showers will begin to diminish. But again, the dense smoke advisory continues out for the northeast interior, and the system's still off the southeast coast, so periods of rain, fog, or drizzle in the southern areas. That'll be the heaviest precipitation amounts here across the pan. It'll be lighter, more showery up to the north, and that pattern kind of continues through tomorrow. Front trying to push through, but the low center still off the coast. Pretty weak though, but periods of light rain good through most of the day there for the southern panhandle, becoming more intermittent, lighter in the afternoon into the central areas, and then scattered to, cloudy skies, scattered showers up toward Juneau over to Haines and along the eastern North Gulf Coast. New wave develops along this frontal boundary. This portion, the northern, really weakens, and wind no longer even a factor with it. In fact, just probably some showers, and that's it. Cloudy skies along this portion of the front. Be periods of rain there from the southern Kenai Peninsula, Kodiak Island, rain, southern Cook Inlet, Kamishak Bay, and then turning to showers over Bristol Bay. Another batch pushing in towards the southwest coast. That'll be moving into Bristol Bay overnight tomorrow night. And then a warm front stays south of the Aleutians there. They're pretty good. Could see some clearing and sunshine again, along with areas of fog. And then the outlook for the first day of the weekend, that whole warm front scenario stays mostly to the south. Some of that moisture might slip on up and bring some light rain, fog, or drizzle, lower flying conditions, central western Aleutians. Could see some sunshine optimistically for the Fox Islands, and then a weak trough through here will be mostly past the Pribilofs by the afternoon, and whatever precipitation occurs will be quite light, and then showers for the southwest coast. Otherwise, partly sunny western areas of the state. Thunderstorms and moderate showers, could be some significant rainfall here over the north central interior on up into the Koyukuk Valley, and then less activity over the upper Tanana Valley and 40 Mile Country. While showers, still a pretty good possibility here for Cook Inlet, and scattered showers, maybe some clearing for the Mananuska-Susitna Valley areas, but the Kuskokwim Valley looking maybe partly to mostly sunny and dry. Kodiak Island going northwest on the flow, still a chance of showers though, especially the northern part, Fognak Island down into the state airport area, best chance of sun, Akiak, and to Sandpoint Chignik looking pretty good there. And another front here, actually the same one coming eastward, spread some rain, better chances in toward Yakutat. Northern Panhandle looks periods of rain, and that'll extend down more of a shower type situation and lighter amounts down toward Dixon Entrance. On for the lows for tomorrow morning, 55 to 60 upper Yukon Valley, lower to mid 50s through the Brooks Range to near 50 on the north slope, upper 40s, central Arctic coast and the southwest interior here, as well as the Copper River Basin, and mostly in the 50s for the Panhandle. Your highs tomorrow, mid 70s or so here up over the upper Yukon Valley, up to near 70 or into the lower 70s, 65 to 72, Tanana Valley, central interior, and lower 60s, upper 50s, lower 60s, you head out toward the southwest coast, mostly in the 50s to mid 60s for the Panhandle. And then your lows for the following morning, we're looking at upper 40s here for the Aleutians, mid 40s Pribilofs to St. Lawrence Island, and 50s mid to upper here for the northeast interior, and still maybe around 50 for the eastern north slope, otherwise lower to mid 50s with some areas in the higher valleys here in the up mid 40s there, southern Alaska, and 50s for the Panhandle. Highs for Saturday, upper 60s or mid 60s to lower 70s now, barely getting 70 here. Fairbanks still could top 70, and mostly in the 60s for the Susitna-Matanuska Valley areas of the Kenai Peninsula, and 63 for Kodiak, 50s out over the Aleutians, and the southeast coast here, not too bad, but upper 50s to lower to mid 60s there, depending on your location and whoever breaks out into the sunshine. Otherwise, again, Kenai Peninsula, upper 50s along the coast into Prince William Sound, probably lower 60s with lower to mid 60s for Bristol Bay, and then the Seward Peninsula mostly in the mid 50s. But Kotzebue and Selawik Valley areas to about Ambler will see 65 to 70.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving on to first flying weather graphic here for Friday morning. Area of IFR from St. Lawrence Island down across St. Matthew Island, otherwise marginal VFR, Bering Sea, Aleutians, up to Kodiak Island, and a fair distance into the, well, across all of southern Alaska here. VFR outside of the smoky areas from the central interior up to the Arctic coast, and marginal VFR, most of the Panhandle, some IFR, Prince of Wales Island, and then on over across Metlakatla, Net, Ketchikan toward Stewart. And then for the afternoon, marginal VFR mostly here for the entire Panhandle, Gulf of Alaska, North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, right up across the south central Copper River Basin areas to the Alaska Range, some of that actually spilling into the Kuskokwim Valley. Otherwise VFR all the way up again, north slope to the Arctic coast and Brooks Range, and some IFR now from the Bering Strait, St. Lawrence Island, down towards St. Matthew Island, marginal for the Pribilofs, marginal for the eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, and some VFR here breaking out for the central Aleutians. And for the following morning, Saturday, we've got marginal VFR here, central Brooks Range, and then along the north slope there, pretty isolated. North slope basically in the Arctic coasting VFR, and VFR in the interior along the Alaska Range and to the east and south, marginal VFR down across Kenai Peninsula, Cook Inlet, Matanuska, Susitna Valley areas into Prince William Sound, some IFR along the coast range here. And marginal VFR almost up to the southern slopes of the eastern Alaska Range there, Mentasta Pass. And VFR kind of holding here, but going marginal there for it looks like, well, ADAC and ATCA, ADAC almost going IFR Saturday morning. You'll see definitely in the IFR there for ADAC in the afternoon, kind of marginal for ATCA, but ADAC West, IFR, pretty good zone of VFR here, moving into the Pribilofs, back down across the eastern Aleutians. Marginal VFR just touching the Bering Sea side of the Alaska Peninsula. That becomes IFR, Nunivak Island, on up toward the Bering Strait. Pretty good in the interior, patch of marginal VFR, Central Brooks Range, Western Alaska Range, going VFR finally for Cook Inlet up into the Susitna Valley, maybe the Matanuska Valley, and then some marginal VFR, Southern Copper River Basin, and marginal for the Panhandle, some IFR up around, looks like Northern Link Canal, maybe Glacier Bay. Passes, Anatuvik and Adigan, good VFR tomorrow, and for the Western Alaska Range, Lake Clark and Merrill, mostly marginal throughout the day, and Friday looks pretty marginal for rainy as well, with the Windy Paso, pretty good VFR. And for Isabel, starting out marginal, becoming VFR, but Mentasta looks like it'll be kind of a marginal day the entire day Friday, with Tanita starting out marginal, then becoming VFR in the afternoon. And Portage, marginal the entire day, with Chilkoot and White pretty marginal as well for the day Friday. And for freezing levels, about 8,000 feet here along the North Gulf Coast, roughly about 8,000 for the Panhandle. A little warmer, 10,000 feet there from actually the White Mountains here up to across the upper Yukon Valley, Brooks Range, on out to the eastern Arctic coast. And pretty good upper level trough here, a couple of cold pools, almost down 4,000 feet with one center here and the other one back up to the northwest. Otherwise, 6,000 to 8,000 across the eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula. Icing. Moisture looks like could be some considerable moderate rime icing here, Kenai Peninsula, mostly terrain-induced type stuff there, otherwise light to isolated moderate here, mostly rime type on up to the north, really fades out here over the northern interior. And also over the southeast coast of that weak disturbance passing on by, got a chance of some icing above 8,000 feet there as well. And for the jet stream, there's that disturbance I just spoke of here that's passing eastward across the Queen Charlottes, and a weaker one up here over the northern Panhandle. Otherwise, we've got this northwest jet, 70 to 80 knots, sailing out of the Russian Far East down and around this low off the southwest coast, and then south-southeast, 50 to 80 knots over the western interior. 9,000 feet looking like this. Wave here coming across Kodiak Island. Otherwise, 25 to 30 to as high as 35 knots on the western Arctic coast. Lighter, 10 to 15 for the Panhandle. Westerlies across the Bering as high as 35, maybe even 40 knots, but lighter for the Aleutians. 3,000 feet west-east flow, but lighter here than at 9,000, anywhere from 20 to 25 knots over the Bering, and 5 to 15 here for the interior. Turbulence, moderate chop likely for the eastern Arctic coast, light to isolated moderate for the eastern Aleutians.
Finding the Milky Way.
Hey there, stargazers. I'm James Albury, director of the Kika Silva Pla Planetarium in Gainesville, Florida.
And I'm Dehne Regas, astronomer for the Cincinnati Observatory. This week we'll be your guides to the galaxy.
Yep, we're going to show you the Milky Way, something I hardly ever get to see in Florida. How many times have you seen the Milky Way, Dehne?
The only Milky Way I see in Cincinnati is filled with chocolate and nougat. For me, light pollution is a big problem. City lights illuminating signs, parking lots, buildings.
And also the night sky. The more light that we shine up, the less light the stars shine down.
Even though it's invisible from cities, James and I can share a sneaky tip to find the Milky Way in your sky. Let's show you.
Okay, let's pretend it's 11 o'clock at night and we're far from city lights.
Wow, in the countryside it is so dark.
I know, and look at all the stars you can see.
So many stars that you can't even count them all.
We're facing south and you can see a faint band of light, and it will span nearly 180 degrees of the sky. This is the Milky Way. When you look at the Milky Way, you're observing billions and billions of stars. This is the galaxy we live in, and its stars are all around us.
There are so many stars in our line of sight that they appear as milky clouds. Most ancient cultures were just as fascinated with the Milky Way as they were with any planet or constellation. You can definitely see why. Out in the country, it dominates the sky. As we see the wide-angle view, some bright and famous constellations can be found along the Milky Way, such as Cassiopeia the Queen, Cygnus the Swan, and Sagittarius the Archer.
Cassiopeia is one of the most recognizable constellations, and on summer evenings, she sits on her throne in the northeastern sky.
What, you mean those stars that look like the letter W, that's a queen?
Use your imagination, Dehne.
Well, that picture certainly helps, but that's hard to imagine.
In that case, picture this W shape of stars as Cassiopeia's crown, sparkling with 5 stellar jewels.
Okay, now that I can see. Now, kick back and look high in the eastern sky. You'll see 3 very bright stars marking the Summer Triangle. The Summer Triangle includes 3 constellations: Lyra the Harp, Cygnus the Swan, and Aquila the Eagle.
Let's focus on Cygnus, since it's probably the easiest to identify because of its cross-like shape. In fact, it's also called the Northern Cross.
Cygnus's brightest star is Dehne, which marks the tail of the swan. Cygnus is located in an extremely rich part of the Milky Way, so imagine it flying along the great river in the sky.
Near Dehne, the Milky Way branches into two channels, leaving a dark region in the middle called the Cygnus Rift. Now face south. Here, the Milky Way threads between two zodiacal constellations, Scorpius and Sagittarius. Scorpius the Scorpion is easy to spot with its bright red star and its curved tail stars. The stars in Sagittarius resemble more of a teapot than a centaur wielding a bow and arrow.
But when you look between Scorpius and Sagittarius, you're peering into the center of our galaxy. In that direction, there are billions and billions of stars, and at the very center lies a supermassive black hole. It's not nearly as big as the one imaged in April, which is such a cool picture of a black hole.
And don't worry about our black hole. It's tens of thousands of light years away, so you won't get swallowed up.
Of course, you can't see the Milky Way if you're a city-bound stargazer. Let's show you the difference between a rural sky and a light-polluted sky.
Ugh, yikes, what a difference. Even though the Milky Way disappeared, we still have three constellations clearly visible to guide us: Cassiopeia, Cygnus, and Sagittarius.
And that's where the Milky Way is, even if you can't see it. Once you identify Cassiopeia, Cygnus, or Sagittarius, scan these regions of the sky with binoculars. With just a little magnification, a wealth of stars will be revealed to you.
So, follow the Milky Way tonight.
And start counting those billions and billions of stars as you keep looking up.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Today's sea ice analysis. Quite an area of open water now, or sea ice free water, extending right up to the north there, well beyond the Arctic coast. This area thinning out along and just north of the Barrier Islands, that obviously melting, and about the same trend for the next several days. Slow thaw to the sea ice conditions here with the main field kind of oscillating around with the currents and the wind. And for the coastal waters here, kind of variable on the south coast, anywhere from east to west. West 10 there into southern Prince of Wales Island, turning south at 10, southern central inside waters, seas at 2 to 3 feet. Lynn Canal south at 15. Then we got northeast 15 here on the north coast, and then lighter west-northwest breezes back to the northwest. And for Saturday, Lynn Canal, south 15, south 10 for Stevens Passage, Clarence Strait, south winds 15 knots, seas 3 feet, and south to southwest 15 here for the south coast, 6 to 7 foot seas, south 20 on the north central coast, and then the extreme north coast, southeast at 15. For Prince William Sound, south winds at 10 knots, pretty light. Light winds also here for the eastern North Gulf Coast, south at 10, seas 4 feet. South 15, seas 5 feet for the western North Gulf Coast and the Barren Islands. Southeast 20 for Kamishak Bay. And for southern Cook Inlet, we've got southerly winds at 20 knots. And those fall back a little bit to about 15 north of the Forelands. Outlook for first day of the weekend, north to northeast 15 for Cook Inlet, seas 3 feet. West 20 knots, Kamishak Bay, right on out across the Barren Islands. Turning southwest at 20 for the western North Gulf Coast, those seas 5 to 6 feet. Small craft advisories, both for the eastern North Gulf Coast there, Middleton Island Zone, and Bristol, and Prince William Sound as well. East 25 knots, seas building to 6 feet. And for Kodiak Island, south to southwest 15 knots, seas 3 to 5 feet. Southwest 15, Sitkinak to Castle Cape. And for the Alaska Peninsula, west-northwest at 15 knots with 5-foot seas. Light westerlies for Bristol Bay at 10 knots. And for Saturday, west 15 there for Bristol Bay, and then the Bering Sea side of the peninsula here, southwest 25-foot seas, westerlies at 15 for the Pacific side, Cape Sarachef to Castle Cape. Castle Cape on up to Sitkinak, west winds 20 knots. And that also extends up across Shelikof Strait with those westerlies at 20. Small craft advisories, east side of Kodiak, 25-knot winds, 7-foot seas. Western Aleutians, west of Adak on out to Shemya, southwest 20, seas 4 feet. And north side Adak and Atka, north of the island, southwest 25, otherwise Pacific side west of 15. And westerlies 20 knots, mostly for the Fox Islands. And for the outlook on Saturday, southwest or west-southwest, 15 to 20 here for the eastern Aleutians, and south to southeast at 15, 4 to 5 foot seas, Adak and Atka, and southeast 15 here, all the way over to Kamchatka, and then from there west, even lighter, south at 10 with 3 foot seas. And for the southwest coast, southwest 15 tomorrow with seas running at about 6 feet, 6 foot seas and 20 knot winds for the Pribilofs, back down to 15 for St. Matthew Island, St. Lawrence Island, southwest 15, and 20 knots out of the southwest for Norton Sound. And for the Saturday outlook, lose the 20 knot winds, almost loses the wind completely there in Norton Sound. 10 knot winds out of the south for St. Lawrence Island, and south to southwest 15 here for the southwest coast. South 15, St. Matthew Island, and westerlies at 20 for the Pribilof Islands with 6 foot seas. And we've got southerlies at 20 knots tomorrow from Wales on up to Cape Thompson, Cape Beaufort, southeast 15. Then 20 knot winds on the western coast. And small craft advisories on the central coast here, out of the east 25. And then we got minimum gales, gale warnings. Eastern Beaufort Sea coast, east 35, 12 to 13 foot seas. And those come down under gale force, but still a pretty stiff easterly wind there at 30 knots with 11 to 12 foot seas. Small craft advisories continue for the central Arctic coast, and real light here on the west side, northwest are variable to 10, and then south at 15 from Wales on up to Cape Lisburn. And for tonight, this front moving in weakens, but rain coming in, winds drop off, becomes more showery behind the front, and that precipitation begins to lighten up here over the eastern interior. Rain continues over the southern panhandle through tomorrow, not much change down there, and this front weakening, but spreads rain into the Kenai Peninsula, Kodiak Island, back to the northwest, and that slowly moves eastward on Saturday along the North Gulf Coast into the panhandle.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.